Roger Remington is the longest-serving faculty member at RIT and is enjoying his 50th year of teaching. He considers himself primarily a teacher who has critical interests in design studies, including graphic design history, theory, and methods, research, writing, and graphic design practice. In addition to teaching and research, he has co-chaired 2 major symposia on graphic design history and written 4 books on design history. He is working on his 5th, The Collective Writings of Will Burton. He is also the driving force behind RIT's Graphic Design Archive in the Carey Collection, a scholarly resource for designers and historians. Roger has initiated and developed numerous graphic design history courses at RIT over his career. Recently, he taught a course on women pioneers in graphic design, and in cooperation with the Dryden Theater at the George Eastman House, a new course on graphic design in film. In fall 2008, he was a laureate for induction into the Hall of Fame of the New York Art Directors Club, and in 2009, he was honored with the Gittner Family Award for Outstanding Achievement in Graphic Communications. He is a guest professor at the Dessau Department of Design, Anhalt University of Applied Sciences in Dessau, Germany, and at an additional School of Design in Southern Germany. In 2013, he was honored with admission to the prestigious Alliance Graphique Internationale, or AGI, and his teaching quality has been acknowledged with receipt of the Eisenhart Annual Award for Outstanding Teaching, RIT's highest recognition of teaching excellence. Jennifer Whitlock joined RIT last fall as the first archivist for the Vignelli Center for Design Studies. She holds a Master of Library Science with an archive certificate from Emporia State University and a BA in photography from Webster University. She is also a certified archivist through the Academy of Certified Archivists and will complete the Digital Archive Specialist Certificate through the Society of American Archivists later this year. Before coming to RIT, Jennifer initiated an archives program for the Indianapolis Museum of Art, served as a project archivist and an interim acting curator at the Architecture and Design Collection at University of California, Santa Barbara, and also worked as an assistant librarian at the Portland Art Museum. And now we will turn it over to Roger and Jennifer.
Well, today we are talking about a new and unique resource here at RIT, the Vignelli Center for Design Studies. And its rich resources in terms of the archives of the professional career of Massimo and Lella Vignelli. The Vignellis began their careers in Italy, and both are trained architects. This picture was taken of them in 1990 when they hosted a major exhibit of their work, which traveled around the world. Their motto is "Design is One," and by that they mean that a number of things. First of all, that they work together, and it's a husband and wife team. Lella focuses a little bit more on the three-dimensional work, the furniture, the showroom work, the displays. Massimo focuses more on the graphic design, but it's really a wonderful collaborative experience. Design is One also, as a slogan, represents an idea that there shouldn't be segmentation of different design disciplines, but that a designer ideally should be able to design everything from a spoon to a city. That's a quote from Massimo Vignelli. The center here at RIT opened in 2010. It's a building designed by Massimo Vignelli, and it's around 1,500 square feet. The portion on the right here, you can see the black area with the lines, is actually the more interpretive side of the center where we have two exhibit halls and a classroom and offices. The brick part on the left, where you see the lettering, is actually the archive part, which needs to necessarily be away from the light. So we have now, over the past few years, brought the center up to its capacity in terms of function, and then with the addition of Jennifer Whitlock, my colleague here today, we really have a going operation. One of our first guests from England at the center in 2010 looked at the new building and he said, well, you've got this wonderful facility and now you have to populate it. And so we feel like now in 2014 we're really populating the center with students and guests. People are coming from around the world to do research in the archives and to make presentations, and it's a very lively, exciting place with faculty and students and projects and speakers and exhibits and so forth. This image is kind of a historic one. It shows Massimo Vignelli himself on one of his first visits to the center when it was finished. And here he's standing here. And he told me later that what he was thinking about as he was looking at this new center that carries his name was how proud his grandfather would have been of him at this particular point. And this is one of the exhibit galleries we have, which showcases much of the Vignelli furniture.
Yeah, and the galleries are open to the public. There's free admission. You can come Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5, or Friday and Saturdays from 10 to 2. You just enter through the University Gallery, and you can take a look at the work of the Vignelli.
This image was the very first day that the Vignellis saw the finished center, and you can see they're delighted by what they see. What you see is actually the archive area, these sliding storage walls, which contain the boxes, which then contain the different artifacts of their career. The top-level archive floor is mostly graphic work, and the second story is actually three-dimensional work, furniture, chairs, and materials of that nature.
Here you can see an example of how the collection came to us. These are the original boxes that the Vignellis packed their materials into. There are hundreds of these boxes. I estimate that there's over 1,000 linear feet. So if you put all of the boxes and containers and furniture and all of the items lined up, it would take up 1,000, make a line 1,000 feet long. And so because they have been very well labeled, we have a basic idea of what's in those boxes, but part of my job is now to find out what's really in those boxes and make a really detailed finding aid that will give the materials context for researchers to do research.
And here we see a student at work with an archival artifact, and this is really what the bottom line of this whole operation. RIT is the only design school, to my knowledge, that has resources like this where students can learn about the history of design through working with real artifacts and not just slides or pictures in books or some other kind of indirect reference. But here the students actually can work in terms of research and analysis of the pieces. And it's really a wonderful and stimulating experience to see their enthusiasm for discovering really these great resources.
And here's another example. This photo was taken about maybe a month ago, maybe a little less. One of our ID professors, Josh Owen, with his class, his first year graduate students, who are doing a project that we put under the umbrella Activating the Archives. much like the name of our presentation. And his IB students are using the archives as inspiration. They're doing a project related to vessels and the Corning Museum. Here's another view of the table, so you can start to get a sense of the kind of materials that are in the archives. We have products. Some of them are prototypes. We have some of the final products, and also drawings and other materials that show the process.
This is a very interesting project that the Vignellis did for Heller Company. Production of these plastic cups, and they come in, as you can see, in a rainbow of colors. There's interesting history behind the development of these cups in terms of Massimo's original kind of European design with an open thumb area, and then the fact that it had to be closed up in production because people were pouring the coffee up to the top of the cups and it was going all down the handle and onto the table. And so it's been kind of a fun piece of history here. This next slide is relates to the Heller cups.
Yeah, this is actually a letter from 1972 where MoMA was accepting the cup with the hole into their collection as part of their design collections. And there's actually a really great carbon copy of the response to this letter where Massimo thanks them very graciously for putting it in their collection and also kind of encourages MoMA to do more promotion of design.
Yeah, this is a wonderful example, though, of what we mean by an archive and artifacts, because here's a letter that was part of the history of this particular project, and we can and it just gives us the detail of that one aspect of that particular project. We're going to look now at a kind of an array of different Vignelli projects over the years, just to give you a feel for some of the range of the work. Here we have some posters. The one on the left is actually one that was done for when the Vignellis were still in Italy, and then the posters range from different exhibits. There's one on the right from the Fort Worth Art Museum, and so a poster is one form of which the Vignellis have been active in terms of their creative output. And of course, I think everyone recognizes this. This is a brand for the American Airlines, which actually has just been replaced or revised, but we at RIT look back on this original project as being seminal and really a timeless example of Vignelli work. This is from 1967, and in this project, Massimo used the typeface Helvetica and popularized that, a very simple logo with American in red, of course, and airlines in blue, and so he's taking advantage of the patriotic color symbolism here. And here's some additional graphic work, sometimes typographic, sometimes a mixture of image and type. Again, Massimo is one that specializes more in the graphic output, I guess, over the years. This is some graphic work for the International Design Center in New York and for the Knoll Furniture Company. They've done some considerable work for Knoll, and Knoll actually carries some of the Vignelli furniture, including the Handkerchief Chair, which we'll see in a moment. And this is really a very famous poster that the Vignellis did for Knoll in 1966. These transparent colors, but this represents, I think, the unique and dynamic aspect of Vignelli design.
And here you can see a piece from the archives. It's actually a little booklet. I don't know if you can tell from the slide, it's stapled down the side, and it shows a little two-page layout for exhibition catalog that they did for Knoll. Knoll had an exhibition at the Louvre in 1971. And they also did the exhibition design, but you can see that Massimo this is Massimo's hand drawing each two-page layout, and if we could turn each page, you would see that. And then if we go to the next slide, you can see then there's a more refined version showing the same things, and you see that distinctive Knoll logo that, you know, even in a sketch, he takes the time to show us that Helvetica.
So one of the real benefits of an archive in this case is that we can see the student or the researcher, anyone who's delving into this material, can get a real feel for the process by which the designer has worked, their way of thinking through a project from beginning basically to end. And we would have pieces, or we would have artifacts, we call them, for each stage in this process. And this is especially valuable with Vignelli because his hand is so great in terms of drawing, and it's really there's just a lesson for students in looking at his sketches and his drawing. Again, another medium in which the Vignellis have worked is calendars, and this shows several of their calendar designs. The one in the background with the white background is actually the famous Stendig calendar, and this was from the late 60s. The one in the front with the 23 is actually a modular calendar that is still on the market. One can still purchase these. I know that they're available at design shops in major cities and major galleries. The Stendig calendar is really huge. It's really quite big and really commands a wall. It's really almost like a piece of art in that the relationship of these letters in terms of the positive and negative shapes really is almost like dealing with sculpture.
And here's another example of something that you might find in the archives. This is an Italian catalog with some designers' works that we're selling. This is actually a company, Nava, I don't know if that stands for something, showing both the Stendig and I guess it's the Heller calendar that came in this envelope is what you see in the back. So it had numerous designers.
Yeah, Vignellis were part of a large design organization called Unimark International, which really for many years in the 70s was the largest design company in the world. That situation went on for a long time with great projects coming out, and then eventually it morphed back into the Vignelli Associates, which is their own company. This is actually one of their more famous projects. This was done for the National Park Service, and these are all examples of brochures that exist at national parks, which the visitor can get information and maps and so forth. But the key thing about this project is that the Vignellis designed it as an information system, these different brochures, and so there's a sense of unity, a sense of predictability that exists as you go from Yosemite to Yellowstone to Joshua Tree National Monument in California. You'll find the same general kind of layout, and this reflects the fact that the Vignellis designed a rational, objective system for brochure design and handed it over to the National Park Service. This is probably one of their most famous designs. This is the original subway map for the New York City Metro. This was accomplished first in 1970 or around then, and was really quite controversial. It was based on the idea of the London Underground, which is an abstraction. This is really he called it a map, and I think many people felt that it was a normal map, when really it was a diagram of the subway lines. And because of its abstraction and because of its other features, like the fact that the river is brown and not blue, This map became very, very controversial, and was pulled from use after a while, and a more traditional map was used. So it's really become kind of a collector's icon. But it's interesting to note that he, in 2003, he came out with a new version of this map, which has been updated, and now he calls it a diagram. This was a standards manual that Vignelli Associates put together for the graphics of the New York City Subway Transit Authority. And this is a way of establishing graphic standards for this, for the making of signs and other pieces of information for the subway. This is all still in use and still very functional.
And here's another example of some of the materials we have that relate to the graphics designs that he did for the subway. This is just simply the signs without any content on them, but you can recognize that stripe across the top as being part of the New York subway system. And this is on a presentation board that would have been used to, you know, probably show them some examples of how they can do their design work.
I want to just interrupt for one moment because we have two comments. One from Bruce H., who says that the Aramark used that same exact cup design at Xerox for reusable mugs to cut down on waste stream. He says he still has the mug, so thanks, Bruce. And from Paul Martin, the event is awesome. I hope you plan to do this regularly. We will try and do that for you, Paul. Thanks so much for your thoughts.
Okay, moving right along. One of the interesting projects that Vignelli's accomplished was in 1972 a branding project for Bloomingdales department store in New York. And the central idea here was an array, a system of bright colored packages and bags and so forth, and then a very unique logo in which the two O's in Bloomingdales were overlapped. And then, again, this shows the range of their work. You can see here, this is some graphics for Cinzano in some of their packaging. And speaking of range, here we're looking at some watches designed by the Vignellis. They started the watch design project in 1994. And these are some of their more contemporary watches. These are produced by Pierre Junot in Switzerland. This is actually one of the more famous watch designs in which one obtains, with the watch, one obtains a series of different colored rings that you can change, which become interchangeable. And I think the watch design itself is very symbolic, I think, of the Vignelli's work in general, and that is very functional and basic and simple, and is not cluttered up with all kinds of decoration. Decoration would really be the antithesis of Vignelli design.
And here's a drawing example from 1993 of some watch ideas. We get a little bit of a side view to show how thin the face of the watch is, and then some different colored choices. But this is sort of the examples, like sometimes you see, I'm not sure if this watch ever was in production, or this could be an early idea for the watch. You know, those are things we're still discovering as far as looking through the archives. Same with this watch. I don't know if this design exists. I don't know if you know, Roger, but this one's a little bit later, 96.
Yeah, I don't think that they actually produced this one. And again, moving to a completely different genre, here we're talking about a very special project beginning in the early 90s in which the Vignellis were kind of frustrated with having to buy neckties of different widths and sports jackets of different styles and so forth, and so they decided, another one of their slogans is, if we can't find something, we design it. And so they designed their own line of clothes, and here we see Massimo in one of their one of his outfits. They had at one point a full-time tailor working at their design office on 10th Avenue.
And in addition to having a huge rack full of patterns for the clothing, unfortunately I don't have a picture of that, we have some of the early thoughts on it. And notice that they call it a clothing system. They're not calling it fashion design because they're sort of trying to step away from fashion and make something that's timeless.
Yeah, Massimo really likes to make a very strong distinction between style, between his work and style, and he doesn't really believe that that modernist design that he practices really has anything to do with style. Their work represents what we would call a modernist, rational, objective approach to design. It's not the only way to design, but it certainly is a very distinctive part of their work.
And here you see one of their drafts for where they're saying, you know, there's a need for this kind of clothing, and going through the timeless and, you know, sort of the things Roger was just saying, like not at every whim of fashion. And you can see this draft where they've crossed out some of the ideas they thought weren't appropriate, and we do have a later version where it's typewritten that you can see this sort of thought process going into these concepts. And then here's one of the sketches where you can see we also get a very geometric drawing of it, but again it says systems, and this is just the basic combinations, and then there are other items that go into this, but these are some really early ideas from the 70s, and they didn't actually realize any of the clothes until the 90s.
Again, moving to a completely different form, here we have some tableware, and in fact, Massimo, when he first came to the U.S., and they worked for several years in Newburyport, Massachusetts, working for a company designing silverware. And this particular design, I think, was produced for a hotel. As was this. This is the famous Chiga glassware, and there were a set of glasses, different size glasses, and other forms of glass that were used for this hotel. This is based on the story behind this kind of curved glass. Massimo was sitting on the Grand Canal in Venice, talking to the client, looking across the canal, and the client was asking Massimo what he saw as the shape of the glassware to come, and Massimo says, "Well, it's going to follow the curve on that wonderful church across the way," and that's exactly what we see here in this particular flask. And this is the Sasaki tableware collection.
And here's some, again, you can see sort of the process here. You can see some sketches of the different shapes, some ideas about color. You can see things that were considered and crossed out. You get, again, into the design process of final, what you end up with.
And again, we move here to their furniture. This is called their Handkerchief Chair, which is still being sold by Knoll, and it obviously comes in different colors. It's quite comfortable. We're very fortunate at the Vignelli Center. We have a conference room with only these chairs, and so we live with them every day.
And here's a box. This is just how we found the box. We opened it and found a pencil still in the box from when he was sketching. And it's obviously some really early, just quick shape line drawings of the chair, but you can already see how much the shape of it is similar to what he ended up with. And here, the little white model of the chair is the Handkerchief Chair, but it's with some Bertoia side chairs that these were going to be child-sized versions, according to the archives, that were never produced by Knoll, but they considered making child-sized versions of these chairs, which was
Yeah, we call these three-dimensional, we call these maquettes.
And here's another, a more, advanced copy as opposed to a handmade one that was considered for the Vitra Museum, makes small scale models of famous design chairs, and so they were considering doing the Handkerchief Chair. I don't know the whole story, but here we have a version of it. As far as I know, it was never made, but maybe that will change.
And this is the March chair.
It is March.
Quite timely.
And here you can see there's some Polaroid photos, the array of them, some of the different, with arms, without arms. We have a number of different versions of the actual chair, different prototypes and final versions of the chair in the archives. But and then the next slide shows you a little sketches of them stacked up.
The Vignellis moved in the 1970s to a wonderful office on 10th Avenue in New York. I've kind of humorously referred to this as the Palace of Design, because it was really a spectacular setting for design to happen. We're looking here into the entry foyer, and these are lead-lined walls, and so it was a wonderful environment for them to work and for clients to come, and this lasted for many years until the owner of the property decided to increase their rent substantially, and at that point they decided to downsize the company somewhat and go in a different direction in terms of their facilities.
Let me interrupt for one moment. We have a question from Paul Martin. Were the Vignellis conscious about creating their archives through their careers? It sounds like many projects and drawings were boxed up for the purpose of being discovered later. Do you know anything about how they, were they just not big thrower-outers? How did they?
Well, I think they had a sense of the importance and a sense of history. I know he's always been, Massimo has always been very interested in the history of design, and one of the reasons that the Vignelli collection came to RIT was because we had been for 30 years at RIT collecting other designer archives. And most of these are in the Wallace Library, but we have more designer archives at RIT than any other place. And Massimo knew this, and so he was very interested in being part of this. The difficulty or the challenge was that the collection was so large it required its own building, and so that's wonderful that RIT was able to support design in this great way in terms of making this facility happen. I think he's very, he and Lel are very organized people, and so I think that it would be logical for them to keep the records of their projects and their career in a very organized way. And thank goodness, I think it makes our job a lot easier now, make Jennifer's job a lot easier now that they have it in this kind of pre-organized form.
And another question from Bruce Hartley, referring to the, the Palace of Design, is that correct? Why were the walls lead-lined? Was that to prevent electronic spying, or was there some other aesthetic reason for it?
Yeah, it was, my understanding is it was only for the aesthetic reason, and you can see the richness in the surface as we look at this slide here in the foreground, these kind of gray square slabs. Of course, they'd have to be squares because the Vignellis are very interested in geometric form and rational kinds of objective design.
And one more question from Paul. Where were all the materials stored before RIT built the building?
Well, that's a very interesting question. The Vignellis put their, when they downsized their company, they put a good deal of their graphic work in storage in a place near Oneonta, New York. A lot of the furniture was part of a massive Vignelli exhibit, which toured the world and was in Russia, it was in France, it was in Italy, it was in London, and so there was a mass of work that was accomplished. When the exhibit was finished, much of the work was stored in Italy for a while, and then it was shipped to Florida because early on the Vignellis had been in conversation with a museum in Florida about having their center there. The negotiations for that fell through, and so the work was left in storage in Florida for a number of years. And then it came to, and then when the Vignelli Center project gains momentum, the work came to Rochester, and it was in storage here until the building was finished. And then it came to RIT, and it was put in storage until it was finally installed in the Vignelli Center. And so it's had an interesting journey, but it survived the transitions, and we're very happy now that it's reached its ultimate home. This is another one of the Vignelli chair designs. You want to speak to this one, Jennifer?
This is the interview chair from Poltrona Frau. I think this was done in 1988. Right. I think there's a story that goes with the whole interview part of it. It's something to do with a TV station. Unfortunately, I'm forgetting the story now.
Yeah, this was in Italy, and they've done a considerable amount of Poltrona Frau, the Italian furniture company, was one of their major clients for many years. This again shows you the range of their work. This is a showroom design for a company in California named Hoiserman, and the unique thing about this was that the company produces office systems and wall systems, and so they use very bright colors in trying to present these different wall designs. This is actually one of my favorite projects. This small, I don't know if you'd call it a coffee table. It comes in several sizes, but it's called Metaphor.
Metaphora #1.
Yeah, Metaphora #1. And Massimo had a friend in Italy who owned a marble quarry. And he said to Massimo, "Can you make something with some of my marble?" And so out of that came a number of tables and so forth. And again, here you can see the basic geometric forms of the, and these would be the basic forms that would be of interest to the modernist designer like the Vignellis.
And here you can see, here's, again, sort of an ephemeral piece that would be hard to track down anywhere, but they've held on to this catalog just about the Metaphor #1 table, which has some really nice photographs of it. And it's also, this particular piece is interesting to me as an archivist, as I'm used to dealing more with papers. And now we have large marble objects that we have to think about storing and displaying, and luckily they're very stable material.
But this, it's interesting when these Metaphor tables were installed at the center, Massimo was there, and he was down on his hands and knees arranging the objects underneath the glass so that they're in the perfect place for him. That's the kind of concern he would have for detail. And this is another one of the tables from that period with a large piece of marble as part of the support system. This is another aspect of Vignelli's work. They've done a considerable amount of branding design, and this is one of their BK designs that they've produced. The idea here is that one develops a strong graphic mark and a typographic style, and that their standards were developed so that there could be a great deal of consistency in the way that the image of the company and the brand appears, from business cards to brochures to the front of the building itself. And this is one of their more recent projects. This is the branding project for the Woolworth Company. This is a company in South Africa, runs a series of large food stores, and it's basically about as simple as one can get. It's just a square with a sans serif W in the center, and it's just the whole branding program, the whole system is just fabulous in terms of how this simple graphic approach can permeate every product that they produce. And here you can see some of the products that they have. So it's typographic, and then this is a more recent project. This is a application of the new subway map, but this is for the Metropolitan Transit Authority in New York, and this is an online program. It's called the Weekender, and the subway user can go online and check into this electronic version of the Vignelli map and see what lines are running on a given day, the weekend, which lines are not running, etc. So this moves them really well into the digital age.
Let me interject for another question or two. We have one from Vladimir Werlo. He says there was quite a progressive movement of modernism and design, not only in graphics, but in all disciplines in the 60s and 70s. Seemed to end around the Reagan era, and in my opinion, it even had gone backwards. During my last visit to RIT, I was sad to see only a few remnants of this era, in particular some partial tracings of the RIT logo that you, I believe that's you, Roger, designed in one of the doors. And this is a question for you, Roger. Do you feel that this era of progressive modernism will ever come back?
Well, I remember you, Vladimir. I think it was Walter at the time. And I'm so glad to reconnect with you this way. This would take a whole webinar to deal with this question, but I think you've really put your finger on a very important point, because Massimo Vignelli and Lola Vignelli and I and others really believe that the whole world of modernism really hasn't gone away. But that it's still very much alive, and that it's survived the critical view of the postmodern period of deconstructionism and so forth, and the values of modernism, the design values that the Vignelli stand for, really are still very much alive. And I like to think that the Vignelli Center for Design Studies exists partly to keep this kind of approach and keep these kind of values present in the education of young designers. I asked Massimo at one point to sign one of his books for me in my own collection, and he signed the book, and he wrote, "To Roger Remington, the high priest of modernism from a lowly apostle." So he and I, we both share this strong opinion about this, and it's, again, a very debatable opinion in terms of the role of modernism, but I think, I like to think that modernism itself has kind of evolved now into what I would call a neo-modernism, or a new phase that's come out as we've weathered the storms of postmodernism.
And we thank you for the suggestion for our next webinar with Roger. We have two questions that we're going to combine because they're very similar, from Paulina Reed and from Paul Martin. Both ask if you're aware of items that are missing from the Vignelli collection, either because they were deeply personal and appreciated and loved by Massimo or Lella, or if for some other reason there's something significant from the collection that we do not have.
That's a great question, and I don't know because I haven't processed the whole collection yet. I don't know. As far as I know, there aren't any stories about anything they didn't give to us.
This really hasn't come up at all in all the conversations about all this. I think it was their sincere attempt to give us everything that they've done and to realize the significance of having it complete, or as complete as possible. The other thing, in addition to what Jennifer said, was that we really don't have everything yet because they're both still alive, and Massimo has been producing work right up to the present, and so there's going to be more work coming into the center. I know this probably scares Jennifer to realize that she's got more to deal with, but I think a good deal of their contemporary work, a lot of their newer work, which has been done in digital format, will be added to the collection. And this is, I think, an interesting image. This shows Massimo at work with two of his associates. They work closely, Yoshi Waterhouse and Beatrice Cifuentes. It's a small team, but very powerful. Beatrice has worked with Massimo so long that she can just about do things automatically the way he would like them. You can see them working here in his office now, surrounded by a very small part of his extensive library, and so they have a very small, intimate group, and they're still producing. And so I think we're toward the end of our journey here.
There's our emails if you want to ask us questions. Mm-hmm. You can also check out our website, find out about upcoming speakers, events, any other information about the center. We have a Tumblr blog page where you can see examples from the collection. So if you want to see more what's coming out of the collection as we process it, you can check out the Tumblr page. And of course, if you want to go to the next, we're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Instagram gives you a little bit behind the scenes, day-to-day things that are happening, and Twitter and Facebook also give you updates from all of those other platforms from the website about speakers and about the collection.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to refer to these websites and so forth, because we do have a very extensive and wonderful series of lectures that we sponsor every year, which we call Design Conversations. And these are open to the public, and for all of you alums that are in the area, we certainly would love to have you come back to the Vignelli Center and come back to RIT to participate in this. 2 weeks ago, we had Michael Beirut as a speaker from New York, and we had over 200 people in the University Gallery. And so it's really a big event. We have, I think, 2 or 3 more coming this year before the end of the spring semester. So please come and participate.
And we have just a couple minutes for some more comments and questions. Bruce Hartley referred back to Vladimir's comment, saying that he would argue that modern, well-designed computer interfaces take from Massimo's views on design in minimalizing, yet being fully functional. Thank you for that comment. I will give a little heads up in that later this summer, Roger is going to be doing a presentation, a RIT webinar in advance of an exhibit that you're doing in the fall. Can you tell people
Right.
just a little bit about that?
Yes, we're going to be having putting up in late August through the fall a really marvelous large exhibit of posters by the great German designer, contemporary designer Pierre Mendel. And his posters will be both in the University Gallery and in the Brochures Gallery concurrently. And we'll also be having a speaker. Unfortunately, Mr. Mendel is no longer alive, but one of his associates, Annette Kroger, will be coming to RIT and will be giving a formal talk about his work. And so this is, again, all open to the public, and we hope you'll come and participate in this.
And we will also be hosting in 2 weeks, on the 25th, another Me RIT webinar with Doug Eimer, an alumnus from the class of '84. It is called Forgetting to Drain the Swamp and Other Lessons of Running Your Own Creative Business. So we invite you all to please register and attend that. It's a design month here at RIT, apparently. So
could be nothing better.
And last comment from Paulina, who says, thank you for the wonderful work you have done, Roger, on getting this collection that has enriched RIT's design school in a profound way. And I think we all agree, if any of you are in the Rochester area, be it for an official event or visiting the area, we encourage you to come in and see what is in the Vignelli Design Center and in the archives. It truly is a unique and globally significant collection, and it's here right at your alma mater. So please consider making a stop in to see what's going on there. And also please visit their website and some of their contact areas as Jennifer gave them to you, because there are quite a number of activities and events going on in the Vignelli Center, and we encourage people to please participate and be part of what's going on in that area. So that is all the time that we have today. Your additional questions can be mailed to ritalum@rit.edu or tweeted to @RIT_alumni with the hashtag #MeRITWebinars, and we will direct your questions to Roger and Jennifer. And they also provided, as we said, their contact information, so you can also contact them directly.